So many afternoons, I sit right here on this bench and I just kind of think about my life and plan my future. One afternoon, a girl came up to me. She had a ponytail. She had this tattoo of a Confederate flag on the back of her neck. And she came to me and she said, "I need to ask you something." And I said, "Sure." She said, "Will you help me get my GED?" It's like, no problem. I started thinking, how difficult could it be? I'm just going to help her review and plan for this test. So we took a walk to the resource center because certainly as a resource center, they had this GED prep book that we would use. So we walk up to the lady and we asked the lady at the front desk, and she says, "No, we don't have that." We both had this look of disappointment, because it was yet another reminder of an absence of a resource. You see, we were both residents in a women's prison. And unlike men's facilities, women's prisons lacked just about everything. They didn't have the prep book. They didn't even have advanced degree courses like men's prisons do. They didn't have updated technology like the iPads the men's facilities have. And some women didn't even have sanitary napkin supplies that lasted them through the month without having to go pay for them at triple the cost. Yet another issue that's not in the men's prison. Now I hear politicians and politicos always talking about prison reform, justice reform, sentence reform. But what does that mean? What does it even look like? Now, there have been laws that have been passed, and for that, we are grateful. Things like the First Step Act. That law is meant so that all your programming hours can go toward your time, and you can be released a little earlier. However, the Brennan Justice Center for Law has reported that it is just starting to work. The calculations and implementations are just being applied accurately like they're meant to be. How do you give people time back when they've been home for 4 years? Now, I just don't understand how people don't get the obvious low-hanging fruit. I know it takes a long time to make laws in federal and state legislature, but let's talk about, I hear a lot of conversations about women's health, but let's talk about women that have been incarcerated or are incarcerated, that have to give birth being shackled. Where are they going? The Equal Justice Initiative did a study of perinatal nurses. And that study concluded that 80% of their patients were shackled some of the time, where 12.3% of their clients and patients, residents, were shackled all of the time. That's just unheard of. 18 states have made this illegal. My state is not one of them. Here's an idea. How about we make it illegal for women to be shackled during childbirth all over the country? This way, we show that we care about the baby, we show that we care about the mother, and we just might make a dent in childbirth mortality. Now, my friend with the GED, I wrote home and got that GED test prep book. She did all the work. I just did a small gesture of getting that book. She ended up passing with one of the highest scores at the institution at that time. Now imagine that GED and my small gesture of getting that book changed the trajectory of this 23-year-old that had 2 kids at home. But more than that, it made her change every thought that she ever had about a Black person that was negative, that she was ever told in her life. But something else happened. I was changed too. I realized that everybody that wears a Confederate flag isn't racist and hates black people. I do so much thinking on this bench. I do understand that when you do a crime, there's a punishment and there's consequences that have to go with that. And I've sat so many times trying to figure out why I had to go to prison to learn my lesson. But what I did realize, had I not gone that path, I would never have seen the God, the good, and the strength in these women. See, I wouldn't have been able to look at TV and become an expert, or read about it, or watch a documentary and become an expert. I would never have seen the strength of someone that has to pull through after losing a child. I remember it like it was yesterday. She was barely walking with two friends holding her up as she found out her daughter had just been killed in a car accident. She got on the phone. She was able to talk to her parents and other relatives. And even though she was crying, there was some sense of love and comfort that she got. But after 15 minutes, without saying goodbye, without even saying I love you, the phone disconnected. And it was just the dial tone that was left to comfort her. 15 minutes. I would never have seen the determination of someone that had to get through their day just in intense pain, just to hope that maybe in the next few minutes, the institution authorities thought she may have suffered enough and took her to the hospital. See, she kept having chest pains, but she would still get through the day because that's what she had to do. And when they finally took her to the hospital, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. There's a lot of talk about women's health and policy and various things. And women are so not heard. But even when you add on a bias like incarceration, they're not even seen. Now, I do understand that when people hear the word felon, returning citizen, they think that this violent person that's coming to invade their space. But that narrative just is not true. They just want an opportunity to make it right. See, people make bad decisions for various reasons. Addiction, social, just trying to survive. But whatever that reason is, when do they get to make it right? The law says, after you've served your time, paid your restitution, or whatever else the judge has ordered. But society, some employers and other entities feel like it's forever. I sit on this bench many times and try to figure out, how can I change that? I ask you, what does reform really mean? What does it mean? You know, when you're in prison, you have to do everything. You have to cook, you have to do the plumbing, you do the laundry, you do the landscape. Those are all transferable skills. So why is it so hard for them to find a job when they come home? I'll tell you why. Because they're still seen for their mistake and not just someone that wants to be employed and take care of their family. I just don't understand. I sit on this bench and I go over time and time again when I was sentenced. There was so much legal conversation going on. I don't even remember what half of it meant. But what I do remember is when the judge looked at me and said, "Miss Carla, you're going to be all right." And you know what? I am. But what about that woman that's giving birth right now and she's shackled and she can't even wipe the sweat from her brow from running into her eye? What about that woman that is just hoping in the next second somebody feels she's suffered enough to take her to the hospital? When is she going to be seen? When is she going to be heard?